We're live.
We're alive!
We're live and we're alive, which is remarkable because I'm on week 4 of this cold and you're starting to get sick too, right, babe?
Yeah, you guys, Adam gave me his stinking cold.
Mhm. Which has left this a pretty mucus-ridden house, really.
Yeah, I'm really pleased. I'm kind of hoping though that I'm gonna get like the cold light version because I'm just
LITE?
I'm
Yeah.
taking so much, like what is it, Coke Zero or whatever? I don't drink pop, but
Is that
like,
what you're taking?
yeah, the cold light, like cold
Oh, I
zero.
see. Like you're hoping you got cold zero.
Yeah, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm just gonna not get it as bad because I'm a woman.
I just averted a cold.
To
Nice.
me. So thank you,
Share
Bob.
your secrets, Bob. Help Faye.
I got good sleep and I ate light.
No, that's too simple. That's way too simple. There's no way that you've got to also probably do something like cut up a watermelon and wear it on your head or something like that.
Yeah.
I know how solving colds works. It's a complicated, weird, obscure remedy is what's required.
I'll leave it to you.
True story though about being a victim. So funny you should mention getting sleep, Bob, because I'm pretty good like with my routine. I wake up the same time no matter what. It doesn't really matter. So I don't like to stay up very late because I will wake up at 6 anyway. So over the holidays, like Christmas, I kind of lazed around and I took some time and I just enjoyed being like the blob. And now like my whole routine is shot. And even though, as I've like noticed for about a week, I'm like, that could be like a little bit of a cold right back there that I think I might be sensing. So I should go to bed early. And that has translated to like watching 4 episodes of Outlander until 2:30 in the morning. And then going to bed, like fully knowing, and then be like, well, I for sure need to go to bed early tonight because I sabotaged last night. And then it's like, oh, now it's 1 o'clock in the morning and I'm still watching stupid Outlander.
Are you upper limiting?
I am hard
Ulping.
ulping
hard.
Yeah.
Let's introduce these other voices on this podcast today. So we've got 2 really cool people with us. You guys are going to have to say your last names, but Bob Schwenkler, I think.
Schwenkler, you got it.
Schwenkling around.
Yeah.
And then Natalie Vertman, is that right?
Vartanian.
Vartanian, aha.
Or Vartanian.
Of the Musketeers.
You have an amazing last name. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
I'm so jealous of your last name.
Your last name sucks, bae.
Yeah.
Rhymes with value.
The worst. That's why I had to keep my maiden name in there too.
Yeah.
And even that's not a very exciting French last name. Like I could have gotten something amazing.
Like
I just got
Vartanian.
the white.
Mhm.
Well, I still thought about changing mine because this is my dad's family, and for a while I didn't talk to them, was estranged from them. I was going to change it to my mom's last name, which is Nazarian. And then even that, I'm like, oh, do I want to just change it all together and just make up a whole new last name?
Starlight.
Leave your credit rating behind. All your problems gone.
I'm not the same person, so none of the same beliefs apply anymore. Oh my God, what if that was a thing? You change your name, your identity changes, and all of the past shit just goes away.
And that's the podcast. We're done.
And done.
So Natalie and Bob are a couple, and you guys are both coaches. And
We're a power couple.
Power couple. I'm sorry. You're both power coaches. You both do a fair bit of leadership work, and also both have a podcast together, right?
Yes.
Yes.
We haven't been recording as much for the podcast, but it had an awesome run, Sex the Podcast, talking to couples and experts about their sex lives.
It's too bad that you didn't pick a topic that people would be intrigued in.
No, I know.
Yeah.
We're like, what's the most boring podcast we can have?
Yeah, like
let's talk about
Well, Evergrowth's already doing that one, so we'll take on sex.
You picked a name that nobody would ever want to click on. Like, that's rough.
Yeah. That's why we stopped doing it.
Too much affiliate marketing. So what do you guys want to say, like just by a brief introduction, anything you want to share about the two of you before we just kind of dive into the conversation we're going to have today?
Bobster?
Yeah, well, I'll just say that I love working with Natalie, and we work with singles and couples around sex and relationships and have a ton of fun doing it, and it's a joy and a pleasure to get to do this with such an amazing lady.
And I will add to that our own relationship has provided much learning and growth and information that we can dispense to our people.
And it continues to.
That's so cool because Bay and I really find that like our relationship is the furnace, if you like, that really like brews a lot of, the alchemy that then I think that's the way it is as a coach, is if you're not really doing that deep work yourself, it's really hard to provide what's next to your clients because you're stuck in your space, and then you can get them here, but you can't take them to the next level.
Agreed. Yeah. And I think there's a lot of it is a willingness too, because obviously I can't coach someone that's a marathon runner if I haven't ran. I mean, I can coach them. I can't coach them on the logistics and the mechanics of it, but like I'll have my own version of doing something crazy out of my comfort zone, but yeah, so that willingness to do that work and to continue to stretch and grow, so we can turn back and be like, you can do it.
Yeah.
I often say that, like, well, for me, sometimes being a coach, it feels like, I'm scrambling along the rocks with my client, and maybe I'm only like a half step in front of them and kind of holding my hand out, and like I'm stumbling and they're stumbling a little bit and we're stumbling together. Like it's not always that way. Sometimes I've walked that path and I know it well, but sometimes I'm really just a half step in front of them, and that's okay. I think that's a thing that as coaches we really have to overcome at times, because we want to be all-knowing and we want to have total confirmation that we have value and not feel like a piece of shit that's not worth anything. But in truth, sometimes you can't, right? Like that's part of leadership, is being willing to just be even a little bit in front.
Yeah, for sure. I actually had this conversation with a client because she was saying the reason she didn't like therapy is, well, one, she didn't feel like she had any stories from the therapist. She felt like she was just talking to a wall in a way that there wasn't relatability there, which also had her basically not want to be honest and open and vulnerable because, she didn't feel comfortable enough. But then she was saying the reason she loves working with me is because I share everything. I share the stuff Bob and I are going through, the rough parts, the cool parts, and even when we're in kind of breakdown. And for her, it's just so comforting. She's like, thank you, because no one talks about this stuff, and at least I feel like I'm not crazy, or, and there's relatability in the sense of like, okay, and you're working on it. It gives me hope that I can work on it too.
Yeah.
And
it's funny. I get on the phone occasionally with people, and I get these edges, or more obvious than edges sometimes, of people being like, "Oh, you have problems, but I thought you had it all figured out." Well, I mean, I wouldn't even call them problems that I have, but that's kind of putting it in somebody else's language. They're like, "Oh, you don't have relationship and sex totally like figured out. You're not in bliss, eternal bliss at this point in your life." I'm like,
"You're like, no, sorry, burst your bubble."
I often I kind of get that reminder of, because my story about myself is like I'm just like this horrible hot mess. Like it's amazing that I put on pants. Like wow, and so that's the story, and it's totally not even true. But
it's not true that you put on pants?
You'll never know.
I know, it's like,
getting up. That right there. Guys, I'm wearing pants. These are pants. I'm wearing pants. For those who are only listening and not watching and wondering what this weird podcast is about. But like one of the things I noticed, like people think that I've got everything together, kind of what you guys are talking about. And so I try to hide my stuff because that's just part of my survival mechanism, is like everything's wonderful and perfect at the ballet. Like there, it's all a show. And I'll forget how powerful it can be to share with a client, like when they ask, like, hey, how's it going? Instead of saying awesome, being like, right shit, actually. I'm having a bad day. And like it'll actually end up being a really powerful coaching call. And without fail, my clients will tell me like, oh my God, it's so nice to hear that you're struggling. Like, because now you're a human, and I don't feel like I'm kind of talking to someone who can't relate, right? Like, for sure we can. Like even this past week, Adam and I made a decision, and we were so we waffled on it so much, like extreme amounts. Like
it was very scary.
Plane tickets were purchased, accommodations were like booked, and then an hour later canceled, and then like 24 hours later purchased again. Like it was just madness, right? And I haven't I haven't actually been in that point of fear over a decision for a while, it turns out, like, which is why, like, as we like expand our comfort zones, you think you get used to it and then you're just excited, but I actually think it's the opposite. I think the more steps we take out bigger, it's kind of like as a grown up, when I go skiing, I'm bigger. If I fall, I'm gonna hurt myself. Those little like 4-year-olds, they've got nothing to lose. They're just gonna roll. And so it gets kind of scarier, but the nice thing is like this amazing reminder that, first of all, once I actually chose it, like empowered the choice, the peace and calm that came with like, okay, now I get to move on to what's next, and having that reminder, because my clients always find themselves in that place, or like even a potential client, right?
Yeah.
So kind of remembering like, oh yeah, it's really shitty when you feel like you're gonna pee yourself and barf all at the same time because of a decision in front of you. And I know, I've been there, like literally 4 days ago. So I just think, yeah, we got to keep doing our own work, and it's always a good reminder to like not try to pawn off perfect.
Well, and the thing is that people will feel it when you're not being vulnerable and honest with them.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's just one story that's coming to mind of a coach that I hired a while ago, and it's he kind of during the enrollment process, he kind of hinted that he was in a tough space in his business, and we've ended up becoming closer friends, and he told me a little bit more about what was going on back then, and I was just it was like I knew at the time that something was wrong, like something in my body felt a little bit off, but I didn't quite register it consciously. So there was a little bit of weirdness between us, because there was something that he wasn't totally, he was only halfway sharing it, which is better than not sharing it at all, maybe, but halfway sharing is also still kind of, it doesn't feel good to me.
Yeah.
And then I think especially in the areas that we have a lot of shame and closedness around, this money and sex in particular, that the more open and vulnerable we can be with that, the more I mean, you're talking about leadership, Adam, like this is leadership by example of what are we modeling for our clients.
And it's really interesting because one of the ways Bay and I train in leadership is that there's kind of the first stage of leadership is often blurting. You've got to get people to just, they don't have a calibration for what's appropriate. All like wherever they're blocked, it's often a complete block. They're just like, there's no way I could share anything about that because the shame is so great. So that first stage is just getting them to like, just spit it out. Just start, like, put words out of your mouth into the space.
Yeah.
And that sort of starts to open the door. But then the second stage is responsibility. And I think this is where one of the places people can get caught up when they think, oh, to be a coach doesn't require training. I can share my shit. I can put it on loudspeaker with people. But there's more levels to it where we're actually sharing in a way that's distinguished and that can actually provide value to that person over there, instead of just like
unloading.
And instead of it just being a bitch fest, which feels good. It does feel nice, but like we want more than that from our coaches.
But is it a service? There's a coach who Natalie and I love, and she says, what does she say again, Natalie? About wounds and Marcia?
Around the wound?
Yeah, and sharing.
Oh, well, so she talks about our greatest wound is our greatest gift to the world. And so usually, right, you're going to attract the people that are kind of in that same place, and, you know, you're a step ahead of them. But she was saying that, but you can't help someone else with their wound when you're still bleeding from yours. And so, you know, your like job is to do your work, to heal from that. And then you can come back and help other people heal their wounds. And so I'm wondering if that bitch fest thing is like they're still bleeding. They're bleeding all over the place, and it's like not helping actually heal anybody.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the gift that a friend can provide, right? Like that, hey, I can share too, and we need that from our friends too. It's just it's really something different from what as coaches and leaders we provide to people.
Yeah, agreed.
How did you guys come together? Like, what's your origin story? You know, like, how did you meet, and were you always both interested in relationship kind of work, sex-based coaching, or is that something that you came to through your own journey and process?
It was a miracle that we met.
It was.
We met at a conference, summer of 2014.
Hey, Bob, I just realized something. You know how you're always like, oh, the forgetting thing. Oh, you like beat yourself up for it so much, but like
Oh, that's the reason we
didn't
met.
forget that day. So just saying. Okay, continue.
So I had just arrived in Portland for this conference and drove in from Boise with my sister, and we had driven a car that had a wireless key. It wasn't my car, but I jumped out of the car with the wireless key in my pocket to go to a workshop, and then my sister texted, and she was like, "You have the key. I can't lock the car." And I was like, "I'm in my workshop. I can't leave." So she had somebody else run up and grab the key, but what happened was that since she couldn't lock the car, she took my duffel bag up to her room, and she was rooming with Natalie and two of Natalie's colleagues. And story shortened, like that's the entire reason that I ended up in their room on the last night of the event and ended up chatting all of them up. And Natalie was intrigued, and it's been magic since then.
Mm. And were you both coaches at this time then?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Natalie's been doing it for longer.
Yeah. Yeah. I did leadership coaching in 2008. And then I went to school and got certified in 2010. And so I've been coaching since then.
And so then talk about what you have worked with people around, Natalie.
Oh, like everybody, I just started out with like, I'll help you with anything. And then a few years after that, I really just realized how everything I do is always back to relationships and love. And my best friend still, she's like, I called it in high school. I used to call you Dr. Ruth, and we would have like sessions, you know. I was like, Dr. Ruth is in. Tell me your crush problems. So I've been doing that since probably 2012 or 2013. I've been just focused specifically around, even though all my clients were coming to me for that, I hadn't claimed it. So in 2012, I started just specifically around sex, love, and relationships.
I think a lot of people that are drawn to coaching, to this work, we've always kind of been that person, but
except for Bob.
That's not
except for me. Story.
So how did you get into it, Bob? I'm super intrigued.
I was a recording studio engineer for 10 years. That's what I went to college for, and was by the end of it was managing a recording studio at a company that's known around the world in the independent music business, and great people making great art, but there was a deeper level of fulfillment that I realized that I wanted. And when I first I was dating a woman who was a coach, so that was kind of my exposure to the concept and the idea. And there was a conversation with her where I realized that even though I knew that I wanted something different and I didn't know what that was, and I realized that I could actually choose to start actively moving toward the whatever it was. And the way that I would do that is simply I didn't have space in my life for anything new to come in, though. So I started letting go of some of the pieces because I had my hands all over the place. I was managing the studio, I was engineering, I was doing the electronics maintenance, I had my own small record label and was promoting the studio. So I started letting go of some of the pieces that didn't light me up as much, that weren't as core to what I was into in that arena. And then and I had been studying business and marketing and stuff like that, and I was listening to coaching audio of my then girlfriends, and I remember the moment super vividly. I sat down on the porch to listen to this audio, and they're talking you through the steps of like how to start your coaching practice, of like send a email out to your personal network and book complimentary sessions and some different things like this. And I got up from listening to that audio half an hour, 45 minutes later, and I was like, oh shit, I think I need to be a coach. I could feel the like nervousness and the butterflies in my belly, and hired a business coach a couple weeks later, like as soon as I could. And it's been I was really pleased to realize, so that was about a little over 2.5 years ago, and I'd say that I've had a business for pretty much a year or two at this point. And I was really pleased to realize just the other day that I haven't had a single instant of doubt whether or not this is the right path. I see some coaches who are like, I don't know if I'm supposed to be a coach, and who go in and come out, and other people just go out and never come back in. And I'm just really grateful for how clear I am that this is my path.
Mm-hmm.
And like Natalie was saying, I was not a coach beforehand. I wasn't the kind of person that people came to for advice or that kind of thing. So I haven't thought about like why I became a coach, but it's what I'm supposed to be doing. And actually, the word coach is just something that people get, that more people get and can relate to. But and I think it's true that that's what I do in some ways, but more than that, I'd consider myself a healer.
Mm. Very nice. Bay, your path to coaching was not super smooth and obvious either, was it?
Well, from the beginning, no. But if I look backwards, it makes sense. So I kind of joke about, and have, I don't know, probably derived some of my identity from like the kind of extremities that I've done. Like I kind of have done everything because, yeah. So I mean, performing arts. I trained in classical ballet and then went to performing arts college, and as an actor, dancer, singer, and then went to university for writing, and got really annoyed with like the subjectiveness of someone saying like, I don't like your character's hair, and I'm like, well, fuck you. So eventually, like I was taking I just took so many electives for so long that eventually they made me come into the office to declare a major. From like they just put together all the credits I had and said like, look, you can major in this or this or this. You've got equal credits in history, psychology, and anthropology. What do you want to do? So I majored in anthropology and minored in professional writing, and had done all these jobs that like were about communications. I've also been a police officer, so I worked as a Royal Canadian Mounted Police officer. I've had like so many jobs. Like I don't even go into all the jobs because there's like so many little different things that I've done, but they've all been with people. Then I went and got my master's degree, so I got an MBA in service management, which is about like organizational behavior and like operations and marketing. And marketing to me is a form of psychology. Like it's really about understanding what makes people work, what calls them forward. And so I've kind of worked in that. I then went and like worked in like marketing and social marketing, which is about getting people to like change their behaviors for the better. And then Adam went into coaching, and I thought it was stupid. And was really resistant to it, all because I was really threatened that I was going to get left behind. And like I could really quickly see that the transformation in Adam was something that was awesome, but I didn't think it was possible for me. So my like general reaction is then to like, well, I'm going to break up with you before you break up with me, because obviously this is going to end poorly for me. So I was pretty shitty about it, and then finally like admitted that I really wanted that shift as well. So then I decided to do the same training program that Adam had done, but purely for self-development and my own personal transformation. Like I had in my life and in my family very vivid examples of what I would get if I kept the perspective I had, like the one that of my family of origin and what I kind of grew up in. And two things made it really clear. One was thinking forward, when Adam and I have like a kid, I would want that kid to have this perspective of like possibility, and like the one that I grew up in my head when I was a kid, which was all like Narnia and like Lord of the Rings and fantasy and possibility and magic, but that I had kind of abandoned when I officially was a grown-up. And so I was like, well, I want my kid to live in this world of possibility. And then after that, I'm like, well, why does the kid get it? That's not fair. I don't want the kid to just have this amazing life while I'm miserable. That's stupid. So then I decided to do the program, but was totally not going to be a coach. And in fact, still thought coaching was, well, I was super resistant to it, I think largely probably because of how much possibility there was. I mean, if the benefit of hindsight, but I think I really thought like, well, if I have a coach, then it means my success isn't my own. It's only because of that other person that I can achieve. So I was dead set against it and was like, well, fine, I'm not going to be a coach. And the leaders were like, well, but it's a coach training program. Like you have to coach people or you won't graduate. So I would do my typical, like, fine, I won't get any clients. And then, like, put it out there, and all these people were like, can I work with you? And then I was like, okay, fine, I will work with this person, but I will not like it, and I will not be good at it. And then I had my first coaching call, and I remember coming out of the office, and there's Adam. He's like, how did it go? I'm like, it was awesome. Whatever. So I, like, resisted every step of the way, which is my way.
When was that, Faye?
When was that?
Yeah.
Like 3 years ago now. But it's so funny because I think it actually took until maybe some point last year when I really stopped and, like, kind of got some altitude and looked backwards over the path to here, and I'm like, oh, this actually makes so much sense. The reason I didn't stay with the RCMP and, like, officially join was because I started that job because I really thought I could make a difference, and, like, people could choose a different path and change their lives. And when I noticed that police aren't typically working with the people who want that, I got kind of disheartened, and I really just wanted to, so I left because I knew that if I kept wanting people to want a better life and they didn't want it, it was going to break my heart. And so, like, just things like that, or, like, seeing how we could make things better, how we can improve, like, one person's life, and how that can improve a community, and how that can improve like, on and on and on. I, like, where I'm at today makes perfect sense. It just wasn't clear to me as I went forward, which I think is often the way.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's especially the way if we're following our calling.
Yeah.
And so, you know, for Bay and I, there was a little bit of, I guess you could call it friction, as we both kind of.
I guess you could call it friction.
Yeah, like as we were
friction.
developing ourselves and taking those next steps and going through a transformative process. Bob and Natalie, have you guys encountered any kind of, like, I think people would love to hear, like, where have you guys bumped into each other in this? Where have you either been threatened by each other's growth, or where do you notice those edges are for you?
Yeah, that hasn't happened.
Not for Bob, especially. Bob's perfect. None of this stuff ever happens for him. It's always me.
Is there someone else?
We're the same.
Exactly. Oh, trust me, Bae. I related. I was like, yep, I've been a little bit more of the hot mess in this one.
Our biggest pieces of friction have been, it's hard to know, like, what's really at the core of it. I mean, it's been pieces around like how would I call it, like sexual freedom, something along those lines for me. And then, but I think even what's deeper underneath of that is simply like, well, you say it, Natalie. You're going to say it better than me.
I am?
Yeah.
You want me to explain what you're going through?
No, just kind of the core, like the core dynamic that's been a challenge for us.
I mean, if you want to completely boil it down, I think it's always around what we think we want and need, and can the other person provide that? And so, and that's been our journey to kind of realize that, because both of us are also growing and learning and changing, and those wants and needs and desires are also kind of morphing in the process. And so it's this constant, like, growth, kind of check back in, growth, check back in, growth, check back in, and to see, like, are we still on the same page? Are we getting closer to the same page? Are we actually growing farther apart from in our wants and needs? And I love how in the Big Leap they talk about that at the very end, around when you have two people that are very much expanding, and so not just one is in that upper limiting thing and trying to sabotage shit all the time, but, like, when you have two people in it, like, ping-ponging craziness off of each other, you need more time and space to process, to integrate, to recalibrate, and then come back. And I mean, this is why this trip has been, like, nice for us too, but it has. I mean, I'm not going to say it hasn't been challenging, especially because, like, again, with Bay, I totally related to that. Like, Bob would get a couple of, like, really cool, like, offers or opportunities, and I would just go into this place of, like, what the fuck? Like, I want that. What do you mean you're gonna go to Bermuda for a workshop? Like, And then I would just get like pissed and righteous, like I've been in this space for 5 years and I haven't been invited to Bermuda, and so it was just this really interesting space because then I was like, where is this coming from? Right? Like I'm not usually like this, and like there's been ways that I've been in this relationship with Bob that I haven't in any of my other relationships too. But again, I don't know if I've been with someone that's been as committed to their growth as I have. I've been usually the one in my relationships that's like, grow, 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 change, evolve, blah, blah, blah. And I might be dragging my partner with me. Like my first partner did leadership with me. But as soon as like we were done and we were breaking up, he was like, yeah, and that, and he just like basically poo-pooed the whole process. I'm like, wow, okay, you didn't get anything out of that around responsibility and, just like that piece. So this is so different for me to be with somebody that, even if we weren't working together, but just like we're working on our own stuff simultaneously. Yeah.
And I'll go ahead.
I'm Canadian, so you have to go. Go.
Americans first.
We got Bob.
And then the other piece that I kind of started to speak about, one of the core pieces for our relationship has been, I met Natalie about half a year after I split up with a prior girlfriend, and after splitting up with her, there'd been it was a really dramatic relationship. A bunch of stuff got shaken up internally and emotionally for me, and I came out literally overnight a totally different person. So basically the way that it felt to me is I'd had a sexual awakening, had felt really closed down, really disconnected, really caged in around sex and physical intimacy and dating and stuff like that for most of my life. And so it was very much just starting to kind of explore and play in a whole new realm for myself. And then I met Natalie, and from almost the very beginning, it's been this kind of core piece of our relationship that we've been that's brought up some of our deepest stuff. And at this point, the way that I would describe it, what it looks like from here is that it's this part of me that feels caged in and feels like I'm not at choice in my own life. And then for Natalie, a lot of abandonment stuff comes up for her. So like navigating those core wounds for us has been super intense and still very much in process. And like Natalie mentioned, she's on a trip for a month, and for the most part we're not talking except for on client calls, and we cheat a little bit when we're debriefing from our client calls and end up chatting a little bit. But for the most part we're just taking space for a month and not talking to each other and getting regrounded, and it's been good because we've been moving through some really, really deep stuff, especially over the past month or so.
Yeah. And I think it's just important for me in all of this is, and I think both of us want the same thing. We want freedom. We want options. We want to know that, everything's available and that we can have everything or almost everything we want and need in this relationship, and so trying to figure that stuff out and experimenting and playing and like, okay, well, let's try this and let's try that. And even a friend said to me yesterday, like, I love how adventurous you are in spirit. I'm like, I think that's necessary for anything, for any learning, right? Any growth. Like, you kind of have to experiment, take baby steps, throw spaghetti at the wall. Like, you're not going to know until you try these things. Otherwise, you're living and making decisions based on hypotheses and theories, And so I appreciate that so much about Bob and I, where we're like, okay, well, let's try this. And let's check back in and see how that works. Okay, that worked, or I like this about that. All right.
Or, well, that was a major fucking shitstorm.
Yeah, we've had the shitstorms too. I'm not gonna lie there either.
where Bob is having a total emotional meltdown for 2 days straight.
I know. I'm like, Bob, I had no idea that was coming. And I felt so unprepared for it too. And I was like, what? Like, it felt like it came out of left field.
I think it's really like being coaches in a relationship. I know they often, when I went through law school, they would say like, you're probably going to be drawn to marry a lawyer because it's tough to be in a relationship with someone that can't speak and know your world. And likewise, these doctors often find themselves in relationships together. And
Yeah.
I think coaching is interesting that, like, part of coaching and leadership is this the rigor we apply to our own lives and the responsibility and the integrity and all of those things. And it's really hard to be in a relationship where you're doing so much work to create those things, but the other person just doesn't have they haven't done the work. They don't have that same facility or even maybe even that desire.
Yeah.
And go ahead, Bob.
I went through a coaching school, which I think probably like many coaching schools, a lot of women, especially the one that I went into, and a lot of women who are just on the growth path, and they're like, what's going to happen to my relationship? My husband's just kind of sitting there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah, we often tell people when we're training them as coaches, like, you're going to go through this program, but your partner in a way is too. Like, because your relationship, there's consequences to any real transformational, any true leadership development. Like, you're going to change who you're being in the world, and that inevitably and inherently will have an impact on the relationships that you
For
have.
better or for worse, like driving together or driving apart, right? That's where choice, I think, really comes in.
Mm-hmm.
Say more about that, Faye.
Well, I mean, when Adam started the coach training that he was doing, I was also pretty close to I want to say at the pinnacle, but I think I'd been there for a really long time, of being dissatisfied with the version of life I'd created. So I was bored, and like, I'm not even joking about Narnia, you guys. Like, I still, like, every time I open like a closet, I'm like, maybe.
Oh my God.
Right? Like, fuck,
Sure.
I hope this is gonna work out.
Mm.
And so I really wanted this version of life that would be a little bit whimsical and magical and adventuresome, and not just paying bills and dying, and scurrying from fear. But I built this life that was like secure and stable and a great job and all of these things. And have you ever seen like a horse like pulling at a bit? Like, where they're just like striving against it, and they're even gnawing on the bit in their mouth. That's how I felt in my life. Like, I would sit in my cubicle and just be like, oh my God, I just felt like totally restricted and tied down. So here Adam is like, he came home from the first weekend like a different human being, and I kind of alluded like, oh, I was the hot mess in the relationship, and in total transparency, that's bullshit. It's not actually true. It never really was either, but it's the fallback. Like, they're the roles that we play, and I get that now. But here's Adam completely like alive, and his eyes are sparked, and like some of it's like shitty stuff that he's relaying, but he seems way more alive than I am, and I'm like this sepia tone version of a human and a life that I want. And like, in all seriousness, there were times where I thought like, this isn't gonna work. Like, we can't stay married, because this is such a painful reminder of like, why does he get that life and I am stuck in this shitty, boring one that I cannot get out of, because I didn't see yet that I had a choice. And so, I really mean the choosing part, because I could have chosen out. I could have been like, fuck you, I want a divorce. At any point, we can always choose. And instead, I chose to stay. Now, my specialty is that I'll choose to stay and then make it really fucking horrible. So I did that really well for like months and months and months before I finally gave myself permission. Like 8 months later was when I gave myself permission to really, when somebody, like, I took a workshop at the same training that Adam did, and the coach was like, well, what do you want? Like, what do you want your life to be? And I'm like, well, it doesn't really matter. And they're like, that's bullshit. Like, what do you want? And it was the first time I got to play in like, well, what if I really could have what I want? Then I'd want this. And then they're like, well, why don't you go do that then? And it was like this magical moment of like, oh my God, that's possible. But if I hadn't chosen to stay with Adam, I mean, we wouldn't be together. And I think like we both talk with our hands, Natalie, and I noticed you were like developing and growing, and at different points, right? Like, sometimes I'll feel like I'm in my like pit of despair while Adam's like, ooh! And it's so frustrating. But the important thing for us, and it's not even like a right-wrong, is that we've chosen that our commitment to one another means this. Like, it means commitment, it means forever, and that means that no matter what like this is, we come back. and like we meet in the middle wherever we are, and so we keep choosing. And that's the way that like we've chosen for our relationship. And by no means does it mean that people have to stay together, or like, you know, like I have no judgment on if someone's like, no, this really isn't working for me or us, and we're going to go apart. Like that's great. It's really just, I really think that choosing is so powerful.
And it's interesting because we have to keep re-choosing, don't we? It's not like we make the choice once and then magically it's, you know, oh, we got married. It's like sometimes on an hourly basis we have to, you know, when one of us is going through something, the other one has to choose like, wait, no, I chose, and like re-choose and re-choose. It's part of the work, isn't it?
And like I get the piece around, I mean, it's a gift and a challenge when you have two people both engaged in the work like you guys are. And then, but it can also be really powerful if even just one person is. And I've witnessed that firsthand because I've completely renovated my relationship with my mom entirely when the moment I realized that I didn't need her to do or be anything, and it wasn't up to her, but that I could decide, here's the version of the relationship I want. Like, here's my Gilmore Girls version of a mother-daughter relationship I want. And the only part of that I can control is me showing up continually as the version of that person, like as who I would be in the thing that I want. And she can show up however she wants. And it's the same with Adam. Like, he gets to show up however he wants, but I get to keep choosing to be the wife that I want to be, the partner that I want to be, like all of those pieces. Though in fairness, I don't know that I practiced it super well with you, Adam, so 1,000 apologies. But I have seen the magic that can happen when we decide to not make our experience of a relationship hinge on the other person's actions or doing or meeting our needs or any of that, but instead just really clear on the who we want to be.
Yeah.
Natalie, Bob, any like resources or places you would point people towards that are either like in relationship and want to create the next level, or find themselves in relationship and are struggling, or anything like that? Like what are some of the places you love to send people or send to people?
I just read Getting the Love You Want by Harper Hendricks, which was amazing. Like, that just blew my mind open. Especially just seeing these stories was so inspiring. These couples that have been, you know, disconnected for 10, 15, 20, even 30 years sometimes, and the way that they're able to just come back together and recreate their relationship. That was an amazing book. Also, I think even, is it Making Marriage Simple by them too, Bob? Or did you have one of those books?
I can't remember who wrote that one. It might have been by the other famous relationship person.
Yes. So I think that's another one, Making Marriage Simple. Just really talks about these like tips for communication and for really kind of putting into place ways to show love and care for the other person. I mean, 5 love languages too. It's just so important to know each other's love languages and the way that you can show love and care that actually lands for the other person. You know, because like anything, communication, if I'm taking responsibility when I communicate, it's because I want you to get it. Like I need to communicate with the intention of I want you to understand what I'm saying, not just I'm going to talk to you and hope you get it. And same thing, like taking responsibility for the love I give is I want him to feel that love from me. And have it be something that fills him up. So those couple books have been pretty amazing.
There's a friend of ours who has this awesome saying. He says responsibilities on the responsibility is on the part of the communicator. Yeah. The communication is the responsibility of the communicator, and the same is true when we're giving love, even if it's not verbal. If we're communicating love, then it's our responsibility to do the best that we can to hone it and make sure that it's being received and being delivered in a way that can be received.
Yeah.
Right, rather than being right that, no, I gave the love, like, I gave that love. You should have picked it up.
I'm so loving to you. What do you mean you don't feel loved?
Yeah, you should notice these things.
Awareness around love languages has been huge for me, and I think I know a lot of other people.
Yeah, and also another resource is a friend of Bob's and now mine as well, but he has a podcast called The Love You Mentory, like documentary but love-umentary.
Mm.
And he interviews like the most like happy and love couples around the U.S. and also some experts too. I actually listened to his interview with Gary Chapman from Five Love Languages recently. But it's just so amazing to, as Bob says, it raises the bar for what's possible in relationship because we have such like limited models a lot of times of what is possible, and it's really cool to hear from these couples like what they do and what their beliefs are and what has them work through things, and just their outlook on that has been for me really amazing. I know for Bob too. It's been nice.
What's the name of that person?
Nate Bagley is his name, but it's the Love-umentary, LOVEUMENTRARY.com, Love-umentary.
Awesome.
We're
We really
flipping.
like Undefended Love. I don't know if either of you two have
Actually,
read.
my therapist just recommended that to us.
That's a remarkable book.
Okay.
One of the most profound things. It's stuck with me ever since I read it 5 maybe years ago, which is that the distance from your own pain is the distance between you and your partner.
Wow.
And I just thought, wow, that's so profound, right? Like if I can't allow myself to feel my own pain, there's no way I'm going to let someone else get close enough to me to be around that. And that really helped me see the responsibility I have in a relationship and what there is to bring in. And yeah, that's just I thought that was a phenomenal book.
Wow. Okay. Thank you.
Okay, anything you would put forward?
Well, no, I'm still on the love languages because I just think that's so, so brilliant and important, not only so that you can learn to speak the language that the other person values, but because in terms of like personal responsibility as well, like actually getting like Marianne Williamson, right, is everything is either an expression of love or a cry for it. And so if you're able to choose between like, well, that person doesn't love me because they're a shithead and I'm obviously valueless, or you can actually go like, what if they do? Like, what if they love me but they just have a really bad way of explaining it? And which one lets me sleep at night, or which one makes me feel like better about myself? And I remember that moment. I did Landmark Forum like 10 or 11 years ago, and I remember this huge piece which was like I just had so much on my dad for never being there, and like it wasn't just the absence. It was almost like absence amplified and just feeling so unloved and so thrown aside. And this moment where the person at the front of the room was like, what if that person did the best job they could? Like, what if they love you? Like, what if you're wrong that they don't love you? Like, which story do you like? And I remember this just moment where I was like, well, I can't prove it either way. So why would I choose this version that's really crappy instead of like, look, okay, so he had like a really shitty way of showing it, but probably like in his own way, there was love there, and whatever got in his way it has nothing to do with me and how lovable I am. And I remember just being like, this huge piece of like, oh, okay, so how someone chooses to love me has nothing to do with how lovable I am. This is awesome. And so I give love languages to my clients all the time and really invite them to do it with their partners or people who are close to them, because it's so important not only as the communicator, like you're saying, to have that responsibility, but also like to have the understanding that allows you to choose the interpretation, right? Like if you're going to have a choose your own adventure, why would you pick the like shitty, like I'm worthless and everyone hates me version? So yeah, I think I'm just going to double up on that one and say.
Well, I'll piggyback there, Bae. It's also amazing, too, because once you realize the ways you feel loved, to then communicate that over, right? Like,
totally.
Like, hey, my thing is quality time, and Bob and I have gone around and around about this because it's like, I don't get it. Like, I just don't get it. And so we've been in this process of like, okay, how can I explain that then? What flavor of quality time? What version of it? Or but for me, because I'm so clear on how I feel loved, I can ask for that. I can ask for a hug because I'm a physical touch person. And I can, say, hey, can we go for a walk? Whatever that is, but like me taking responsibility for feeling loved too.
Yeah.
And that puts her at choice instead of just getting pissed at me for not loving her the way she wants. Like if we don't even know how we want to be loved, how's the other person supposed to get it?
Yeah.
Oh,
Well,
my
that's
favorite. Wait, I have to. My favorite is when you're like, this is what I want you to do, and then the person doesn't. You're like, you're only doing it because I told you, and it's like, hang on, wait a second, what? Okay, this
Right.
person that you love took on doing the thing that you asked for that you said would make you feel loved, and now you're making it difficult, like, to receive it. So there's just like this never-ending. I mean, and that's an upper limiting problem right there, right? Like, how much love can you accept before you have to make it
Yes.
like something else?
Yes.
yeah.
Reject it. Yeah.
We're just at the end of our time. What would you guys like to plug? Like anything that you're up to, or that you're taking on, or that you're excited about that you want to share? Would like to invite people to look at themselves, or nothing?
It's a good
Well, I mean,
question.
right now we're really excited about just our one-on-one work with people.
Uh-huh.
And so,
Actually, more like two on
I mean,
two on two or 2-on-1.
2-on-1.
Yeah,
Uh-huh.
our private work.
Yes, our private work. So we work, like Bob said, with singles who are looking to be in a relationship, or a single person in a couple, or the couple themselves. So with the couples, it's around getting to the next level in their relationship, going from good to great, or you're good and have a little bit of bumps, and helping to smooth that and have stronger practices and foundation, and see what's possible. And with singles that are wanting a relationship, like craving that and running the same patterns that they usually do, or unsure like why they keep recreating a certain scenario. So those are the people we work with, and just right now the invitation is just, if you're curious about any of those things, inviting someone into a conversation.
And so do they get both of you? Is that how that works? They
They
get
get
sort of
both. They get all of both of us.
amazing.
That's very cool.
And we might play. I mean, this is the part that's really fun for working with Bob, is we get to play. Sometimes we'll alternate where it's like a 2 on whoever, and then 1-on-1 with one of us, and then with the other. And with the couples, we can kind of play around with that too if they want individual time, and then we swap. And so it's cool, and we can be really creative around that and really tap into what the person or people need to serve them best.
Yeah.
I would imagine that would be like huge value, because sometimes you just can't hear what one person has to offer, or it's just inevitable that one coach will see something different than another coach, or even see it from a different lens. So that's really cool that that's something you provide people.
It's been described. One person described it as they felt like nothing slipped through the cracks.
Yeah.
Nothing was able to get by us because we both have our own lenses, and we're both kind of tracking and watching different things.
And we're both really intuitive in different ways, and so it's just kind of having 4 eyeballs on one person or 2 people.
Nowhere to hide. If you're looking to hide in a coaching relationship, these are not the people to talk to.
No, actually, it is funny too when we get the people that right off the bat are like, I'm really nervous. We're like, we won't fight, promise, or not that hard, but it's that just kind of this knowing of, oh man, I'm going to have a guy and a girl here to just,
I usually tell people, me too. I'm scared too right now. Don't worry.
Right? I know.
Do all the worrying.
So if anybody's interested in reaching out, you can send an email to hello@natalieandbob.com. Pretty basic one. We don't pay much attention to it really, but you can email us there for sure.
Cool. hello@natalieandbob.com.
Yep.
Awesome. Bay, anything you want to put forward? I can't think of anything we're up to right now.
Yeah, well, we haven't sat down and like created our intention for this year yet. We'll be doing that in a couple of weeks. So it's actually been really cool to hear you two share that, because we talked about creating some of that last year, and then we like hiccuped, and it's been a year and we haven't really created it. But I know that's kind of like a dance that we're looking at, like maybe even working with a group in that way, because when we do workshops with people, it's the same thing. Like Adam and I we have different strengths and superpowers that we bring to that, and it's just really powerful, and it's really fun. It's really fun for us. So thanks for reminding me of like the possibility there.
Yeah.
So that's probably to come, but.
Natalie mentioned the Love You Mentor. I'm a huge fan of sending people there, and so much of it is just about creating new models for ourselves, or providing new models for other people. And it's when a couple gets together and does work, it provides a totally different model that most people are not used to. A happy, healthy, thriving, cooperative relationship.
Yeah.
No matter where you model that, and certainly if you both are out doing your work, it's going to be powerful for people even if you don't say a single word about that kind of meta aspect of it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well said. Well, that's the end of our time today. I feel like we could just hang out and chat for like another 6 hours, but then people would stop listening to us. So thanks, Natalie and Bob. Thanks so much for joining us. It's been
it was really fun.
really nice to connect. Take care. Thanks everyone for listening, and we'll see you in a week or so.
Bye-bye.
Bye everyone.
Bye.